Welcome to the Growing the Game session. Today we have 4 of the top business leaders in the 4 probably newest leagues in women's sports doing really innovative things. I'm really excited to introduce them and have you all hear from them. I'm going to start from my right. Actually, you know what? In women's sports, we do men first. So men first, we have John Patricof, the CEO and co-founder, Athletes Unlimited.
Thank you.
Yes. EJ Lawrence, the head of partnerships development with Overtime. Another killer. Amanda Vandervort, president of the USL Women's League coming right now. I mean, it's coming like a freight train, right, Amanda?
Yes.
August?
It is, yes, August.
You're going to get tips from my old friend Amy Scheer, who I haven't seen in like 4 months, and who just launched the PWHL. So great job. So this is a great time to be talking to brands and to talk, brand speak and what you all bring to the table with your leagues. And I'll start with EJ first. Overtime, obviously like a massive content, digital-driven company. Youth market, a lot of things that brands want. Can you talk a little bit more about that and what people can expect from Overtime Select?
Sure. So Overtime is kind of an interesting company to talk about, and I don't have enough time, so I'm keeping it tight. But we are truly a brand for the next generation of sports fans, and I know we'll say youth, but it really is this under 35 audience of next generation sports fans and next generation athletes, and that's who we really lean into. Because we're so great at telling stories and creating content and building community, we have an amazing following of over 100 million fans and followers across our platforms. We do 3 billion monthly video views, but it's really because we're joining these athletes in this journey even earlier in their career. And so because of that, that's allowed us to launch Overtime Elite, which is our men's basketball property, which we're very proud of. We had 2 players drafted to the NBA top 5. We then moved into football property for OT7, and then we expanded into boxing with OTX. And then this summer, we're so thrilled and proud of Overtime Select, which will be launching this summer at OTE Arena in Atlanta, Georgia.
It's amazing. So, everybody's talking about, college women's basketball. You are going to now be the pipeline going into college women's basketball that people can start to follow, right?
Absolutely. So we have a lot of our leadership is here. Sasha Mollis, I'm sure you've run into her. Her and her team, Shay Dawson and Mindy DeBruce, have been deep in our relationships with this pipeline of incredible talent. So you have people who are the number 1 and number 2 in the class of 2025 who are coming through Overtime Select as captains. And Aaliyah Boston was on the stage, was part of our previous events called the Takeover, where we did a crossover event with OTE players and incredible women's basketball players, because it is about elevating the game. And if you want to see sick hoops with Overtime, that's who you want to see.
Really cool. Can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
And John, you definitely go athlete first also, but at the pro level, can you talk a little bit more about what that significant value proposition is?
Yeah, absolutely. So Athletes Unlimited owns and operates 4 professional women's sports leagues, AU Pro Volleyball, AU Pro Basketball, AU Pro Lacrosse, and AU Pro Softball. We've been around since 2020, and as you said, really at the core of what we've been doing, building a new model from scratch, the whole idea was to center it around the athletes from the beginning. So athletes involved in governance of the league, operations of the league, and then when you get actually to watching our games, you can watch incredible high-quality pro athletes. You can watch them on ESPN, our major media partner, with over 50 linear games a year on ESPN networks, but also really emphasize the storytelling that we can do with the professional athletes. So we really partner with them to give them an incredible platform to allow fans to connect with the athlete.
So having that access to the athlete, that's your secret sauce.
Huge secret sauce to kind of the idea of the way we structure the leagues. Each league takes place in one city, so we're with the athletes the entirety of the season. They live in market. They're playing the games all in one market, and so therefore we have the ability to have cameras on them, to work with them, and then also really to empower them to tell the stories they want to tell off the court as well as covering them on the court.
Super cool. Amy, brand new league that launched in the PWHL. You guys are doing it really differently. You've learned over the years all the different leagues, teams, et cetera, that you worked with, which means we're industry veterans, we're old. Can you talk about that offering and what it means as a single entity?
Yeah, so we're different in the sense that our ownership owns the league and the 6 teams. So our job at the league is to help resource and make the teams run. So our teams are fairly lean right now. We've got 5 people in each market, and we've got 55 people at the league level. And so the fact that I don't have to talk to 6 separate owners allows me to move quickly. I report into a board, and so we very much have a culture. If it's okay to make mistakes, just make sure it's a two-way door and it's something you can walk back from. So given that we're a single entity, we make decisions. It's the only way that we could have been up and running in the time frame that we did. I was hired 2 months before and started 2 months before our first game. So the ability to move fast, the ability to not have to get consensus among 6, 7 people has allowed us to just move along like the pace of a rocket ship. So an interesting model for us, but it's worked.
So if I'm a brand, I can basically come to you and I can buy league level and I can buy team level. Can I also buy athlete level?
Yes, so you could come to us and you could buy one country, both countries. We also have player rights.
I forgot the countries, sorry.
Yes, we can buy by the country, US or Canada. And we also actually, in our CBA that we have with our players, which is 8 years, we are actually able to sell a certain number of partnerships on behalf of our players at the market rate. So when we're out selling, we represent the teams, we represent the league, but we are also able to represent our players.
Very cool. And Amanda, you're going to launch in August. I've seen the news coming out. Congrats on the new SeatGeek deal. Great deal.
Yeah. Thanks.
When you're presenting to partners, like what is kind of your secret sauce, your value prop?
Yeah, the USL Super League, we're launching in August, mid-August. We have 8 teams across the country, stretching from Fort Lauderdale and Tampa up the East Coast to Brooklyn, and then all the way to Spokane, Washington. So we're a national league with a very local footprint. What we're delivering through the USL Super League is more opportunities in more communities for women's professional soccer, really than ever before. And when you look at the numbers of players that there are, I mean, we're exploring these new leagues in women's sports because there's just so many players and so many opportunities. There's 40,000 women playing college soccer in this country today, and there's only 300 spots, for them to be professional athletes. So in our first year, we'll add 160 more professional players into the economy or into the ecosystem, that many front office staff, and really grow women's professional soccer. So for us, the value proposition is growth, and it's bringing professional women's soccer closer to home in a lot of these cities that haven't had the opportunity before.
Okay, and so how many cities to launch?
8. We'll launch in 8 cities. We've already announced 8 expansion teams.
Wow.
That'll be coming in the years to come. But a lot of the work that we're doing at the USL, the Super League, but also our men's leagues, the Championship and League One, is stadium development. We really believe that, the stadium infrastructure and the revenue that you can drive through managing, controlling, owning your own venue is an important piece of the overall, long-term sustainability of the Super League. So those 8 projects will come on board as their stadiums are completed. A good example is Indianapolis, Indiana. We've announced Indy 11 as one of our future Super League teams. They're building a $1 billion multi-use stadium, complex in downtown Indianapolis that'll have a 20,000 seat stadium and be one of our future Super League venues. When that stadium's done, that team will come into the league.
Awesome. And we talked a little bit about rivalries and how they play into your business model. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, we believe in the power of rivalry, but we think about it, of course, from a fan perspective. Like, we know the fans. I mean, Amy and I we were all talking about this backstage, right? Like, the fans love rivalry. We know the data shows that the fan wants a rivalry. That's what they look for in their experience. But we've built our business as well around this idea of rivalry and competition. So we're building like the regional growth of our leagues because we believe it's easier on the players. Listen, in our first year, we're going to have players flying from Fort Lauderdale to Spokane or to Dallas. We have a team in Dallas. Like, that's a long trip. Can we build more Tampa-Fort Lauderdale rivalries, which will be in our first season, because it's easier for the players on travel. It's less expensive for our ownership groups. We think brands and partners will really lean in, who might be looking for demographics related to reach certain groups of people in some of those areas. But it's how we've built our business model really is on this idea that local competition is something that fans, players, owners, like the whole ecosystem can really benefit from.
Totally agree. You know, truth be told, we were backstage and Jessica Berman came in, you know, the commissioner of the NWSL, and I tried to get them to arm wrestle.
And we hugged instead.
They hugged
to be
instead.
fair.
I was kind of disappointed, but you know, darn it. So just moving on. You know, we also talk about, you know, you have your value proposition. Let's talk about scale. You know, that's been something that has been missing in women's sports, and it's something that obviously is improving every day as we go. John, you talked about your new deal with ESPN. Congrats on that announcement. Really important. Can you talk about what that means for Athletes Unlimited?
Yeah, I mean, we actually have taken a different approach in the way we're structured relative to USL or PWHL or most other leagues, because AU is really centered around the individual athletes. We really are emphasizing that connection to fans around this idea of joy and uplifting the athletes. And so I love rivalries. I'm a huge sports fan, but I think there is a new generation of fans also that are looking for really connecting with the athletes and uplifting kind of that sense of celebration and joy. And so that's really our focus at AU. And we bring that through in two ways. One is world-class athletes on the field where you can tune in to ESPN, 50 linear games a year, plus games on ESPN+, 1 foot very squarely in the traditional media landscape. We think it's incredibly important for us, and it's been an incredible partnership with ESPN. And then we broadcast and communicate a lot on our social channels and a huge emphasis on the athlete storytelling. So for AU, it's really that balance. It's scale through traditional linear broadcast, complemented by storytelling and deep, deep content that we're creating with the athletes and really co-creating and telling their stories the way they want them told.
Really smart. So when you bring a new athlete in, you're basically automatically adding to your scale, really leaning into their audience and bringing them into yours, in addition to new sports, right, as you add sports.
Correct. I mean, and you're talking about, obviously, we are so excited about AU Pro Basketball and being part of the basketball ecosystem with the WNBA and what Overtime's creating. But we're really excited about sports like softball, for example, which are absolutely massive at the college level. You're talking about hundreds of thousands of people. You go on ESPN tonight, you will absolutely guaranteed be watching college softball. There's a massive audience for that sport. We are the pro league in the United States in softball. We're planning to go even deeper. A little preview. We in the coming month, will be announcing even going deeper into that sport. And so while we have that scale and the single entity approach that you mentioned, we take a lot of time to work with the athletes and talk to them about what they're looking for, what they want. And that's actually a much more deliberate process that, complemented by being entrepreneurial, we really want their involvement and do it together.
Fantastic. And EJ, you at Overtime, you have a massive set of fans to tap into as part of Overtime. With launching the Select League, how are you going to tap into that? Was there strategy behind, like, we know we're going to get to a women's only league, it's just a matter of when? How do you think about that?
So that's a great question. I think for us at Overtime, I keep challenging myself. It's been an incredible day of programming where we're all asking ourselves, how do we scale? Where can we lean in? Where can we invest? What's the right combination of how we're spending our dollars if we're a brand, or what kinds of assets are we creating if we're at the league level? And for us, it's been this playbook of equal parts storytelling and relationships and access that's allowed us to keep building these superstars. But we start building those relationships so early with them that we're embedded with their families and know their parents and work really closely with the athletes and figure out, who do you want to work with? What do you want brands to know about you? No, you don't need to change who you are. The brands want to understand who you are and celebrate who you are. So it's this really fun time in this space right now. But in terms of scale, OTE, we're really proud of how we launched. We learned a lot about VOD and YouTube, streaming our games live on YouTube. Our audience of the under 35 sports fan likes to watch with their friends. So we have influencers calling the games. We have the comment section is insane. I try to keep up. You can't do it.
No.
And so everything that we learn from each of our leagues, we bring to the next league that we're expanding into. So for Overtime Select, those games will be broadcast on YouTube, but that's just one component part of what that ecosystem actually is comprised of. There's short form storytelling. There's tons and tons of content that our talent, Overtime talent, celebrated trusted voices are creating with the players. It's on and off the court. It's on and off the field. That's why our audience knows that we get it. So that brings this incredible volume to why it's time to do it now.
Yep.
And even also in planning the seasonality of the league, these players are in such high demand. They are committed to finishing their high school careers, going to prom, competing in their AAU with your AAU teams. So in existing circuits in the space leading up to when our gameplay actually starts, which is early August as well. So it's just really doing our homework and doing that audit to make sure we're getting it right, because you can get it really wrong.
Yeah, you can. You can. And, Amy, the PWHL doing a lot of things right now. When you think about scale, really easy way to do it is adding teams. Any plans to do that? And just other ways you're thinking about really growing your fan base?
Yeah, it's amazing that we've been in business for 4 months, and the biggest question we get is, when are you going to expand? We are not quite ready to do that yet. We're going to wait till we have some more world-class hockey players in the pipeline. But I think for scale, first in the first year, one on the broadcast end, we made sure that we held back our streaming rights. And so we've had every game on YouTube, and the numbers on YouTube have been amazing. Not just in US and Canada, but we are now in 80 countries across the world that we've seen watching our games. And the second way that we've tried to work at scale in our first season and will grow next season is what we would call our neutral site games. And so we moved a game from Toronto into Scotiabank Arena and broke the attendance record globally for women's hockey with over 19,000 people. And then we saw an opportunity to do the same in Montreal. So this past weekend, Saturday, we went to Montreal and broke the record again with 21,105 people.
Ooh.
The U.S. record was in Detroit, which, by the way, we don't have a team in, 14,000 people. We also did a game in Pittsburgh, which was their largest women's game as well. So I think we play these neutral site games, and I think we grow the number of those that we'll do across Canada and the U.S. so we can be in other markets. So while we only have teams in 6 markets, we will definitely play single games across the country in NHL arenas. So we'll continue to grow by streaming, and we'll continue to grow audience by going and kind of barnstorming.
So can you tell us more about, fans are showing up, they are excited. They are really excited that it feels like, hockey's had its moment.
Yeah.
What type of fans are showing up? Like, if you walk into your arena, what can you expect to see? Is it consistent across the cities, or is it, what is it?
Well, every city has its own vibe in terms of how they enjoy the game. I'd say the one consistent thing across all 6 markets is absolute joy. The game ends and no one leaves. And you're like, get out of the building, like, I don't want to pay overtime. But there's absolute joy across the entire fan base. And so you see, obviously, families. You see a ton of kids with signs, and the signs are amazing. Then you start to see women in their 30s, and the best sign I saw was a woman in her 30s and had a big sign up that said, if I knew this was going to happen, I would have tried harder. My favorite sign I've seen all season. And then you have like women my age who just can't believe that this now is happening. And then you see young professionals. So we're about 60 women, 40 men right now, but we've got a good swath across families, older women, and young professionals. And like I said, the overarching theme is just pure joy. Our games are just, they're total fun. But if you have a chance to go to one market, go to Montreal. It's a dance party.
Very nice.
Yeah.
That sounds like a fun one. John, you remind us, you started AU in what year?
2020.
2020. What a year start.
Yep. In the middle of COVID, we announced Athletes Unlimited and the launch of softball on March 3rd of 2020.
Wow.
And our first season we held in August of 2020. So we persisted through COVID. We held our first season of volleyball in 2021, and then that summer, the first season of lacrosse. And so in basketball, we launched in 2022. So it's been amazing. We've now run 15 seasons across all 4 sports.
Wow, 15 seasons. So when you think about the fans for each sport, what do they have in common, and maybe a little bit of the differentiation amongst the sports as well?
So there's no doubt there is a sport nation for each of those sports, and some fans are super basketball fans, and they have no interest in volleyball or lacrosse or softball. And we've learned to adapt, and therefore you heard me talk about AU Pro Softball and AU Pro Volleyball, and really building the equity around each of the leagues in each of the sports. But at the same time, we do know that there is a fan that cuts across the sports, and they are really driven by the values of our organization and the way we show up and the way we communicate. The most popular kind of, when we rank the fans and what they love about it, they love the world-class competition. They love the high quality at which we execute. Fans of women's sports really notice that. They really notice when you invest, when the broadcast has 10 cameras as opposed to 3 cameras, what they're used
Totally.
to. But the biggest piece is really that they know that the athletes are involved in decision making and how we are conducting our business and the fact that they are so involved in what we do, and that really resonates with the fans themselves. I think we live in an age where fans want to invest and get and spend their time in organizations, and that's in sports and outside of sports, where they know that the employees and the athletes and all the stakeholders are considered. And we were the first sports league to be formed as a public benefit corporation. Incredibly proud of the policies we've put in place and our commitment to carbon neutrality, a very progressive pregnancy policy, which we developed with Moms First and Reshma Shajani and others, and fans really take notice of that.
They do.
So it first and foremost has to be about world-class competition and giving the athletes that platform and connecting you with the best of the sport, but it's also the way you show up and the way you conduct business, and that matters a lot to fans.
You know,
It does.
totally does. In women's sports, there's so much about community. It's not just your give back to the community, but the community that you create. And you guys have a heck of a community with Overtime. Right? Can you tell us more about what that community looks like and how they interact?
That's so funny. I was like, I have something to add.
Yeah.
So everyone, as an employee at Overtime, you are invested in the company, and we all are building relationships with all of the players and all the families and all of our brands. So if someone steps foot in the arena, you're going to see a friendly face, and everyone's like, you guys are great. We're like, welcome to our house.
Yeah.
You know, come on over. And so when thinking about even the building blocks of Overtime Select, we knew that because we learned so much about what the athlete community needed and what our fans were interested in, we knew that it was about creating and empowering this next generation of role models and role models for the next generation.
Yep.
And so what does that mean? When you're moving into these next chapters, are you prepared to be there? Are you surrounding yourself with the right people? We talk a lot about love at our company, and it's true, it's important. And so even as a part of Overtime Select season, we're building a NIL business summit. And so this is another example of
Great idea.
it's a wholly owned sports property where end to end you have the players, you have the ability to activate by way of NIL agreements. We own the inventory. There's different content extensions. There's media. So again, back to the NIL summit, for the players, they're learning about media training. We're touching on financial literacy and financial education. What is the business of basketball? What is a contract? Do you have a checking account, right? So there's different things that are really important that we all maybe don't spend as much time thinking about because of the age of these athletes and their families. So that's something we think a lot about.
I've been to your venue in Atlanta. I've seen the classrooms behind the scenes. And everything. It's really, really cool. If you ever have a chance to go down there and check out an Overtime game, it's actually a really neat venue and great story behind how it got built. Amanda, this is your audience. You're still out there selling as you prepare for this season.
Yeah.
What do you have that's kind of new and hot that you're saying, like, I want to tell this audience, I want to tell the brands what we have to offer. They have to know about this.
Yeah, I mean, what's new and hot is our professional women's soccer league. But let me tell you a little bit about what's different about the USL Super League than the NWSL or other sports properties out there. I've actually learned a lot here listening to these guys, and we aren't a single entity. So actually, in the USL, in the Super League, our players are contracted to their club, not the league specifically. And that means we don't have a draft. But what that means is our players have autonomy over their careers, and they can pick what city they go to, what club they go to. So when we talk about players this idea of professional women's soccer closer to home, it also means a lot of our players get to go back to their hometowns as professional athletes and help build the next generation or be there, in their hometowns with their families and their support networks and communities. The USL Super League is also on the international calendar, so we'll play from August to June. In August 2024 to June 25, we have a winter break and a summer break, so that puts us on a different calendar than any other existing soccer league in the United States today. So, for a brand partner to come in, that gets them exposure to a similar demographic in a soccer audience, but during different months of the year, which we think is really, really powerful. For our players, again, that means that they actually get the summer break window off when the Women's World Cup is on and the Olympics this summer, for example. Or in the winter, they'll get a nice mental health break in the winter, which we also think is really important. The other thing about the Super League is we exist within an ecosystem of scale. So it's not just our 8 professional leagues, but it's the W League, which has 80 clubs across the country. One of our founders of one of our W Leagues, Andrea, is here in the audience, who runs our Minnesota Aurora Club. It's been incredibly successful, sold out every game they've ever had for the past 2 years, so we're excited for them this year. But that scale of pre-professional soccer and then an academy system underneath that. So we're focused not only on the professional game, but actually the player development as it builds into being a professional athlete and building an integrated pathway for the players, for the coaches, for the staff, but for the brands really to take advantage of the scale of our audience across the entire country.
It's great. So unique to soccer here in the States. It's common overseas, but love that you guys are doing that.
Thanks.
Amy, you guys had brought on partners, Fast and Furious. What do you still have coming? Like, what would brands get excited about with PWHL?
Well, I think the partnership community has been great for us. Everybody came on, to KB's point, Fast and Furious. But now we need to be thoughtful about what the partnerships look like. It's great that we've had the support, but we need to get beyond just selling rink boards, TV time, jersey patches. And I think the beauty of our league is that there's really no pre-existing set of rules. We are making our own rules as we go, and that's not an exaggeration. What might happen tomorrow could be completely different than today because someone comes to us with a great idea. So from a partnership perspective, we are not put in a box, nor would our partner be put in a box. I think our only limitation is the ideas that we can come up with and that we could execute at a high level. So I think that's kind of our unique proposition, is that we're not beholden to a set of documents or a set of rules by a league that's been in place for 50, 60, 70 years. Very, very much open to new ideas, to thinking about the way we activate our fans, the way we activate in a building. And so we like sitting down and having those conversations and seeing what we can come up with.
It sounds like a salesperson's
no
dream.
box of rules.
Salesperson's dream. I mean, you get taking applications or resumes? Or...
I mean, yes, I will be hiring a few new salespeople for season 2.
I love that.
Yeah.
John, you mentioned something big coming or new coming in softball. Any other things to share with the group about how brands can get involved?
Well, I mean, we just ended our 3rd basketball season. I mean, everybody in the audience knows 144 incredible players in the WNBA. Most have had to go overseas in the off season when they're not with the W. We created Athletes Unlimited to give players an option to stay here in the U.S. It's been incredibly well received. Obviously, we benefited alongside the W and the NCAA from just this tremendous surge in popularity in women's basketball. So that's been absolutely incredible. We plan to go deeper and invest more in basketball. But I'm really excited looking ahead to the coming months. On the softball front, we just signed Jocelyn Allo, the all-time home run leader
awesome.
in college softball. She'll be playing in Athletes Unlimited this summer. We have an amazing partnership with Little League where we take all the players from our championship pro season and bring them down to Greenville, North Carolina, to play in front of the Little League players and their families. Games are on ESPN. Dick's has just come on. Dick's Sporting Goods has just come on as a partner of that, which we're incredibly excited about. But in volleyball, which is the sport I haven't talked about, it's a sport that is an absolute giant. When you look at NIL in college, basketball leads the way. Softball and volleyball are right there, second and third, and so we are continuing to invest in volleyball, in basketball, and softball is really where you will see the biggest news from Athletes Unlimited in the coming weeks, so stay tuned. We're going deeper and even more. There are so many great athletes and so many fans, and we want to super serve them.
Fantastic. And then finally with Overtime, brands, how do they get involved? What do you want them to get involved with?
There's a lot of ways to get involved. I think my biggest takeaway is lean into the storytelling.
Yep.
Right? We talk a lot about this Overtime megaphone effect. It's a real thing, and you can support these athletes and their families and these sports and sport overall by leaning into telling the right stories with the right partners.
Makes a lot of sense. We have a little bit of time left. Amanda, I have a really important question for you.
Okay, go on.
Okay, if you were to describe Laura Carenti's game, like her soccer game, like,
Yeah.
would you say that she's what's her persona? Is she like a center back? Is she a striker? I have a strong opinion.
You have a strong opinion.
Yeah.
Well, as a goalkeeper myself, I always look to my center back to take charge and lead everything in front of them. So Laura, for me, is a solid center back. I trust her with my life.
No, gotta tell her about this. I had an argument with her. I called her a striker, and she got really mad at me. So you had her back with this one. So thank you to the panelists. Fantastic job. Really look forward to all that's happening. Really appreciate it. Thank you.